retire to St. Gall because it's got a most to die for library. So look, the Irish, it's about love. That's what Bridget stood for. And when Ireland becomes reunited, that's what will happen. It will be a love gesture. So no violence, thank you. Just the love path. I've said before, my first point was about the duty of veracity legislation, because you see, love and truth go together. When you truly love somebody, you that's the truth, and you share it with them. You tell them you love them. When you are deceitful and you lie, it doesn't work, and then it doesn't ring true. That's the whole point about the crowning of the king of Tara. It was only when the true king or queen is crowned that the Leofoil sings. And it was the same in Dalraida when the people from Ireland went to Argyll. They brought that custom, and you have to put your foot in a rock in Argyll, and then it sings, and that's truth. So, okay, the seventh point I'm really saying here is about the environment, because the other crisis that we're facing as a world is, meanwhile, whilst all this stupid nonsense over Brexit's been going on, whipped up by these ignorant, unloving demons, masquerading as human beings, we have a world to save, right? And the European Union has been doing its best. And I know the demonic propaganda is saying, oh, no, global warming, forget it, it's all fine. Just look around, look at what's happening in the Arctic, the Antarctic, look what's happening in... I mean, I have a dear friend who lives here in the village in France, who was here, born before the war, in 1937, I think. And she tells me this village used to have 2 or 3 months of deep snow every winter. Deep snow. And now we have like maybe 1 or 2 days. That's in the Massif Central in the middle of France. Global warming is a long-term fact that we can't see because we live such short, brief little lives. Talk to your neighbours, talk to your friends, think it through. Look at the weather patterns. And let's get the scientists working on it. We need to find a Green New Deal for all citizens working. We need to reverse austerity. We need a citizen's income to replace this unemployment or overemployed. At the moment, we pay people vast amounts of money to burn up loads of carbon, fly around the planet, and be self-important, or to be in the military and burn up huge amounts of resources. They're paid vast sums of money, or they're unemployed and have no money at all and can't do anything. Well, this is bonkers. We should be paying people with good ideas for new businesses, ideas for new products, ideas for new inventions. The Teslas of the next generation, and the Einsteins, and the artists, the Rambos, the poets, the painters. In Ireland, they actually help you to become a poet. The same here in France. You can become a writer and get tax rebates and stuff. So the economy needs totally changing. And that's what dear old Prince Charles has been saying. The guy is speaking truth. That's why he's just been to the Middle East saying, actually, I'd quite like a Palestinian state, please. He's not a fool. He was walking around Bethlehem, same as I did some years ago, having the same, downloads. So, yes, a Green New Deal, finding new alternative energy sources. We don't need to keep burning up oil and stuff. There's enough potential if we only get research and development done at a high enough level. We need to invest in peacemaking projects instead of investing in new generations of weapons of mass destruction. I mean, there should be a referendum, in my opinion. I'm putting this to the Constitutional Convention. There should be a referendum on whether we, in Britain, even want nuclear weapons anymore. Are they any use? I mean, nuclear research is quite interesting for medical and energy sources. Yes, keep the know-how, but I don't think we need great submarines armed with huge, threat weapons around. And if we're afraid of China or Russia trying to invade, well, we'll do what they did in the 19th century when Napoleon was going to invade. We got the Welshwomen all dressed up and patrolling the cliffs of Wales, and that saw them off. That I'd rather face nuclear weapons than an angry Welshwoman, I assure you. So look, next point And we have to therefore deal with the poverty trap into which so many citizens have fallen in Britain. The housing crisis and homelessness. It's a scandal. We can fix this, but we can only do it together, and this should be part of our constitutional New Deal. It should be written into our constitutional, the right to a house, the right to meaningful work. That's what Beveridge wanted. Did you know that I was told by a Dutch friend of mine who visited here that when a couple get together in Holland, fall in love, want a family or whatever, the Dutch government give them a house to set up a home, like to own. And they don't pressurise them into paying. They expect that eventually, when the couple are earning and have got some money, they will repay them and pay back. But it can be 20, 30 years, whatever. So that's a scheme that the British should investigate. How come they can do that in Holland and we can't do it in a much richer so-called Britain? So I would say a guaranteed right to housing. These people dying of cold on the streets, it's absolutely, this is not very Beveridge-ish. It's as if the welfare state has collapsed, And this has come from the Brexit people. These are the people pushing for that. That's why I'm opposing them, my friends. And we should realise that a Green New Deal guaranteeing these rights for all our citizens is better if we do it as European nations holding hands together. The French want this too. It's difficult for some people in France to survive. The elites kind of jet set around and have their, swanning about on the Côte d'Azur, whereas the normal French people struggle to make ends meet. So that needs rethinking too in this country. And Macron seems to be far more these days happy to float around with slightly dodgy characters than actually deliver on the streets for normal people. And I have written to Macron actually offering to mediate with these, the unrest that's gripping France, because I have the mediation skills as a mediator. And of course, he did set up the Paris Peace Forum. Whether I helped inspire that or it was just synchronicity, I don't know. I'm not making truth claims because I'm too scrupulous and religious in my use of the term truth, but it's possible. And I wish he would do more on domestic peace, is what I'm saying. But anyway, we need to work together. The French are amazing people. They have so much good energy. And they're so much like the Brits. There are so many Brits living here. And this Brexit thing is a nightmare for us all. So instead of going down the Brexit route, the UK Constitutional Convention process, we should re-examine and totally rethink in a written constitution, what is the purpose of our lives? Is it to scrabble about for a pittance that we can be chucked out of our homes and made homeless and die of cold and have no pension till we're 75? These nutters think that's fair. Or is it to actually have a civilised life together where we all work our hardest, be it by hand or pain or hand or brain, as the Labour Party constitution says. I'm a brain worker, but I can also build stuff. Do it together across the European Union. And that means some reform in the European Union structure. Fine, let's go for it. More freedom of information, more intelligent policies that don't bring countries to their knees like happened with Greece. We need to learn from the lessons of why people went off the European Union project, because it became, sort of over-centralised, bureaucratic, unfeeling. That's how it seemed. It needs, therefore, also attention. And that should also be done. Okay, the next point I want to come to is, and this is, again, I'm not the first person to say this, but I'm, proposing this as part of the work of CRY, the Constitutional Reform Initiative. I'm suggesting that the House of Lords in its current form is not sustainable. The Scottish Nationalist Party don't even have any Lords. They don't believe in the system. They won't tolerate submitting anyone. It's the largest body in the world of such a parliament that has no elections. So I'm suggesting that instead of allowing it to continue in its current form, the Constitutional Convention of all four nations, that's Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, should consider that instead we turn it into a federal Senate, which would have members elected from all 4 nations of the UK. And from that body, the federal Senate, the future government of the UK would be taken, of the UK as a whole. Now, this is probably the most important constitutional change I'm suggesting. The Westminster Parliament of the House of Commons is no longer fit for service as a parliament for the whole UK. It has no authority as far as I'm concerned. It's an English coup has been done, and that's only happened because some very corrupt forces and sinister forces have taken over the Conservative Party and, you know, malleated it into their own diabolic ends. So that body should become simply the Parliament for England. The Commons should be renamed the Parliament for England, and members from other parts of the UK shouldn't sit in that lower chamber. But the federal Senate should be elected from all 4 nations. Now, what would be the criteria? Who would be able to stand? Those can be discussed and debated by the constitutional conventions of all 4 nations. This is a huge proposal I'm making. Why am I making it? Well, you know, I lived in Canada for many years. I love Canada. It works in Canada. We have provincial legislatures, assemblies, like Alberta, British Columbia and so on. And then we have a federal government in Ottawa. Well, that's all I'm suggesting. So the federal Senate would be like the Canadian Parliament is in Canada, so it would be in the UK. Difficult questions, you know, how many seats would the English, Welsh, Northern Irish, Scots have? You know, would it be proportional to land area, to population, to wealth, you know, etc. I mean, or, you know, what else? We can discuss this. I also think that the entire religious and ethnic mosaic of the UK should be represented in the federal Senate. So this is where I want religious leaders, faith leaders, to get involved in constitutional reform debate. I don't think it's right anymore that just the Church of England has statutory representation in this upper house. I mean, I think, although I'm an Anglican, I think it's not fair. And what I was taught at Brighton College, the Anglican school I went to, was to believe in fair play. Well, it's time to blow a whistle on this. No, we want Zoroastrian, Buddhist, Hindu, Jewish, Muslim, Shia and Sunni, and Ismaili and Sufi, you know, and Druid and all the rest. They should have at least 1 or 2 representatives each in the federal Senate, because they're part of Britain, they're part of our culture, they're part of the UK. Well, how would that work? You know, I don't know. You think it through. You think it, but I think it would work, and I think it would be great. And of course, all the different Christian varieties, Catholic, Protestant, Anglican, yeah, let them have their voice. I mean, I think all these faiths should just have like 1 seat each, a bit like my periodic table of the world's religions. Now that Senate, which would now have its sort of moral fibre restored, would be the only authority to deal with UK-wide issues like foreign affairs, intelligence, national security, peacemaking and defence, and it would provide the budget for, you know, UK-wide institutions, which I would say would include things like roads, transport infrastructure, railways, airports, you know, the kind of things that coastlines and the Coast Guard and the Post Office, and, you know, why not renationalise British Rail? I mean, I thought it was quite good in the old days, etc., etc. And you know, if some people want a kind of internet grid to be part of that, British Telecom, whatever, then that could also be within the federal Senate's remit. Because there's no point each four nations doing their own thing. No, do it as a national thing. I would say, well, there's a discussion about education. I think, no, education should probably be devolved to the 4 countries, but maybe some basic codes of citizenship could be dealt with federally. And the last point I want to come to is proportional representation should be brought in for elections to the federal Senate, to the 4 parliaments, which should be put on an equal footing, by the way. and to all other local elections, political elections in every part of the UK. So those are my 9 proposals for constitutional reform. I think if you look into them, you'll see that every single one of them is common sense, you know, and I commend them to your attention, really. If you want me to email you the text, I can. I mean, I feel a bit like Jeremy Bentham. He used to write constitutions. He set up University College, and he was a lawyer and a thinker and a philosopher, and you know, a friend of some quite clever people at the time. And he used to make up constitutions. People would like write to him and say, can we have a constitution for X? And so he wrote several for countries in Latin America, Eastern Europe. But he never did one for the UK. There is an excellent constitution unit at University College, which he founded. So I'd like them to get involved with what I'm proposing, the Constitutional Reform Initiative. It's not just, I can't do this alone. I can give an impetus, I can share these ideas. It's up to you, my dear listener, to take away and run with this. You know, get involved in creating a constitutional convention in your own country, be it Scotland. You've got the support of Nicola Sturgeon, she's already on the case. In Wales and England and Northern Ireland as well. Let's do it. Let's do it together. Let's do it intelligently. And to be honest, what Boris Johnson and his mad bunch of rogues in the English Parliament want to do is neither here nor there. They've so lost the plot that it's to me it's, you know, one needs to cultivate humour, because they have no moral integrity between them, and that's the point I'm really coming back to finish on, because what I've said is how to restore the truth deficit. Well, I've given you a strategy. I've tried to share with you, I think, 9 solutions. Now I want to talk briefly and finish with the business about the Middle East, because, bless it, the Trump-Netanyahu partnership has unleashed on Israel-Palestine a Trump peace plan. I've been looking at it in great detail. It was done very interestingly to take attention off the impeachment process and the laws proceeding against Netanyahu. You know, it's a couple of scoundrels who are pretending to do something good. Now, I've read the thing fairly carefully, and I've downloaded the text, and I'm still going through it, and I will provide a proper written report in due course, but I can see enough in there that I think it's of interest for Palestinians and all of us who support a 2-state solution to give this some credence, this peace plan. It's not completely lacking in truth content. There are some good ideas in there which I've myself thought of as well. And one is the obvious thing, well, how do you get Gaza and the West Bank to make one state? Well, you build a secure railway line between the two. You build a high-speed railway, and it's secure, and you know, then you can go back and forth. Well, that's in this peace treaty proposal. What about port facilities for Gaza? Well, that's in there too. They desperately need a port and an airport. It's in there as long as a peace treaty is signed and then it lasts for 5 years. Then at the end of the 5 years, you get an airport and a seaport. Well, that's a good thing. The price is that Palestine has to agree a treaty of non-violence with Israel. Well, I've been calling for that all along. This is exactly what I've been saying. The port, the railway, the peace treaty. Obviously, an independent Palestine would have to have a non-aggression treaty with Israel. You can't have guerrilla groups inside Palestine or Israel, you know, secretly arming against the other lot, like happened in the tragic aftermath of the Declaration of Independence of Israel, when Arab states all sort of piled in and tried to destroy the newly born Israel. And that chaos, you know, no, it can't be gone back to. There are difficult questions. So I think the non-violence treaty clause is not a problem. And I've met Palestinians, I've spoken to them. I think there is a question of pride and ownership. I think the way this thing has been launched was wrong. I think Trump, Netanyahu and their team, Kushner and people, should have spoken to the Palestinians and brought them on board much earlier. They should have brought in some ideas that they might have come up with. I know senior Palestinians who probably have their own suggestions to make, which might have and could still go alongside what's been put on the table. What I think is wrong is for Trump, Netanyahu and Kushner to say, here's the plan, either accept it or there's never going to be another. It's like a shotgun wedding. You don't invite somebody to get married and then threaten if they don't, you'll chop their head off. You don't use threats. So that's the style, unfortunately, of Trump and Netanyahu, and that's wrong. So the truth deficit, the good things in the peace agreement treaty are good. The bad things are really annoying, like do it now or you'll never get another chance kind of threats. That's not how to talk to the Arabs. I love the Arab culture. I'm doing a commentary on the Quran. I've taught Muslims. I'm a Sufi myself. I'm a surrendered soul. I love Allah. You don't talk to Allah's people with threats like that. They're children of Abraham. And Abraham came from Edessa, just up the road in Turkey, for God's sake. He didn't come from Ur of the Chaldees, over where Leonard Woolley said, way over in southern Iraq. No, he came from just up the road in Edessa. We have to get peace between the Palestinians, the Israelis, and the Christians, and the Jews, and all the Muslims. Now, I'm working at that higher level. I'm the interfaith guy that's done the interfaith peace treaty. I'm working on the opening of the Golden Gate, which is in the city wall of Temple Mount. It's the symbolic moment at which messianic consciousness comes back to this planet, when we heal these divisions. It's when Abraham comes back to life, and Muhammad and Jesus, and we all live happily ever after. That's the happy ending of history. Not the ending, it's just like the end of that little phase, right? And it's when we have the retrial of Jesus in Jerusalem, and this time he wasn't a blasphemer, we love him. He gets pardoned officially, I hope. Because the guy was a good bloke, So, yeah, ambitious or what? Well, this is my equivalent to their Trump, Netanyahu fait accompli. I'm saying, bring it on. We love it, but let's have more. Let's have plus, plus, plus. Let's have, the other thing I like about their peace plan is it's really good on tourism. It's saying, look, we'll even let the Palestinians have a bit of the Dead Sea. They can have a tourist village there. Thank you. Great. Like it. Why not a bit of Galilee Sea as well? Why not a bit of the Jordan? No, we want the whole Jordan for ourselves because we're really paranoid. Okay, on a lease like Hong Kong, so maybe for 10 years. So you're sure that the Palestinians are going to be peaceful and not bring arms in across the Jordan. That's what they're afraid of. Well, then 10 years of Israel sovereignty, 10 years of shared sovereignty. Eventually the Palestinians can have the Jordan Valley back, once they prove that they're really loving and nice people, which of course they are. I've met them. So there are ways round this. There are dialogues and discussions that can be had. We have to go into these talks with truth in our minds, hearts, souls, bodies and mouths, This is rebuilding the trust. It's been shattered by the Holocaust. It's been shattered by Arab, elites who were seduced by Nazis coming over, fleeing Germany and saying, we hate the Jews, you hate the Jews, let's kill them. There's a whole history, a hidden history largely, of anti-Semitism exported from Europe. There's the Grand Mufti exporting anti-Semitism from Palestine to Berlin. All these nightmares have to be, not brushed under the carpet, but we have to grow out of them. When I was a kid, I used to play with my brother and sister and friends, and we'd dress up with sheets, and we'd turn off the lights, and we'd go and hide, and then we'd jump out and go boo at each other, and we'd be terribly frightened. And that was a great game on a wet Saturday afternoon. Kind of that's what we've been doing here in the Middle East. Some people are still playing that game. Trump and Netanyahu killing Qasem Soleimani seemed to me like another example of boo. You know, it's like we've got more ghost power than you do, you know. But you can't bomb your way into Dharma. The soul of that man is, you know, no doubt met his maker and is at peace. I think, I didn't know the man personally, but it seems to me he did some pretty amazing things for the Iranian people from his own Shia perspective. And we have to honour the Shia voice in the Middle East and their views, including in Yemen. From the interfaith peacemaking perspective, the Shia, the Sunni, the Ismaili, the Sufi, the Orthodox Jewish, the Samaritan, the Reformed Jewish, the Orthodox Christian, the Protestant Christian, the Catholic Christian, the Nestorian Christian, the Gnostic Christian, you know, they're all part of the same big family. We can't afford as a planet to let these differences shatter our ecosphere anymore. We have more in common. We have to learn to share that. So I think there's some hope in this peace plan. I don't think it should be totally shot down, but I do think it needs it needs the batteries in. And that's the willing to engage by intellectuals, colleagues in the World Intellectual Forum, people from all over the world, Palestinians, people that mean well to both sides, people that love Israel and Palestine and want to see these dear cousins make peace and, you know, make love ultimately. That's the purpose of this whole project. That's why we humans are here, is to love each other, isn't it? Okay, final point. As a Kabbalist as well as a Sufi, I just want to comment on Isaac Luria's role in all this and remind people of his contribution to theology of peace. He said two very important things that we should bear in mind, and he influenced the great Hasidic tradition through Dov Ber of Metzlich in Ukraine, which is another tragic conflict going on that I'm working on, friends trying to resolve. I think Isaac Luria's insights can help this. You see, Isaac said, God has not left this world or this universe or this room or us. God is hiding inside us all. When God created the universe and us and everything and nature and the beauty of the cosmos and stars, conventional theology says, well, God created it all and then sort of went away somewhere up out of the picture. That's Newtonian thought. God's gone away, very far away. That's what some African indigenous primal peoples say in the book on God in Africa by Mbiti. He says, most African tribes say, yeah, God did create this world, but he's gone a long way ago. You know, he's no longer active. Which, of course, is a problem because it means that no one of the things falling apart because God's gone, right? He created it and left like an absent father, you know. Well, Luria said no. He thought the whole thing through. He said, no, God created this through Tzimtzum, which is contraction. So instead of a kind of expansion and then God sort of went off, God went internally into himself, herself, like a kind of, you know, love fest, like Shiva and Shakti. And in their love for each other internally, this universe then manifests externally. So the heart level is where God lives still, indwelling in all of us. And us humans, we're made in the image of God, right? So we're supposed to be one of the primary vehicles of this God force on the job, so to speak. The Tibetans call this the Dorje energy. This is a Dorje. And they believe that Indra's thunderbolts are this Dorje energy. Well, and that is sort of, again, going out. But what Luria said is it's an inward motion. So the good news from this is that God is present everywhere. God is hiding in the middle of every Muslim. God is hiding in the middle of every Jew. God is hiding in the middle of every Christian, every pagan, every Druid, every Marxist, every feminist, every Confucianist, every Taoist, every Scientologist, every, right? It's one universal, absolute God consciousness is inside us all. That's what Isaac said. Bless him. You know, he was a very clever guy. I love him. He ended up in Safat, which I've been to on pilgrimage. I've sat by his tomb and communed with him. Okay, so that's, with that we can work, you see. If you upend the conventional theological stuff, we can then work, because if I sit down and talk to you as a Palestinian or a Jew or a Christian, I can see the God energy within you. I know there's the God energy in me. I'm just trying to recover it. We're doing an archaeological communion of common interests, because the original inspiration creation was for peace. Yes, ecstasy, yes, beauty, yes, art, yes, magic, but peace. It wasn't war, it wasn't violence, it wasn't chopping heads off, It wasn't blood on the carpet everywhere, it wasn't blowing up bombs. The bomb is the opposite of tzimtzum, which is gathering, bringing together. And the word God itself in English is gathering, bringing together. So God energy, I think Luria knew what he was talking about, because he came from a deeply prayer-felt place, okay? The second point I want to make about Luria's potential contribution to this situation is he was aware that catastrophes happen. It's weird. He's a bit like Claude de Saint-Martin, the great unknown philosopher of France, who had a kind of a Lurie-esque take on cosmology as well. Lurie said there are catastrophes that happen, and sometimes there's a fall. Like a plane's going along, and you think, oh, great, I'm off to San Francisco, and suddenly the plane starts to drop out of the sky, and you realise that's why the captain's got the seatbelt sign on. And if you're lucky, he restabilises and carries on flying. But sometimes it crashes. History's full of sudden drops, crashes, catastrophes. And Luria looked, therefore, at the problem of evil. And obviously the Holocaust is one of the worst ever. But there have been other Holocausts. There was the Genghis Khan one, the Attila the Hun one, there was the Roman Empire one, there was the slaughter of the Druids of Gaul one. 3 million died of Celts here, and so on. There was 9/11. Well, okay, only 3,000 people died, but it was a pretty horrible shock, and it was all fake. So that's a double whammy. What accounts for these? Luria's theory, which is very good, and Brexit, by the way, is another one. It's like the plane falling suddenly out of the sky. Clear blue sky. You think everything's fine. Bang, Brexit. Luria said, he said, it's called the breaking of the vessels. What happens is, and his explanation is quite sophisticated, he says, it's not evil, it's too much light suddenly appears. And when too much light appears, suddenly the vessels, that's us, little people, chaps, we can't cope with it, it's too powerful for us. And so things break and fall apart. It's not that Tiberius was an absolutely wicked, evil guy. It's just that he was so tempted by, power, and his vessel broke, his moral vessel broke. It's same with someone like Jeffrey Epstein. He's not from the beginning evil. Luria would say that he was tempted by so much power and so much cocaine and so many willing, compatriots having a party, that his vessel broke. His moral sense of compass just catastrophically shattered. And that happens to be the explanation in Luria. So I would say that Brexit, likewise, is not such, it's almost like too much light, because I've met some of these Brexit fanatics. They're so driven, they have a sort of funny light in their eyes. They believe everything is going to be fantastic. It's like, the universe is suddenly going to be self-repairing and everybody will have, everything. It's like a Walt Disney